Welcome, comrades, to the art of cinema. I am Colonel T, and with me, as always, is our wise and respected leader, the mastermind of the revolution, our invincible and triumphant General Secretary F.
Thank you, Colonel. May the people prolong their days in the land where they dwell, the People's Republic of F, that by my leave they may live in obedience to my glorious leadership, in reverence to my voice, holding fast to my ideology.
Sir, today on The Art of Cinema, we'll examine the Kevin Costner film Wyatt Earp to better understand how it reveals the truth of your revolutionary ideology. And what's interesting about Wyatt Earp is that it covers the same story as Tombstone, the first film we covered on this program.
That's correct, Colonel. That is interesting. And what interests me about Wyatt Earp is to see how successfully it deconstructs the Tombstone story. You see, deconstruction is a vitally important element of the revolution. The people must be aware that centuries of capitalist imperialist hegemony have indoctrinated the Americans with a false consciousness. That's why we must rethink Tombstone. For Tombstone, unfortunately, only serves as an instrument of social, geographic, and economic control of the proletariat. But atrocitarian literacy offers a more dynamic framework for understanding. A person who's literate in atrocity can use Wyatt Earp as a diagnostic device, an analytic tool, as it were, an instrument of process to help us deconstruct Tombstone and re-educate the Americans with a new consciousness that places all things into the master-slave dialectical relationship. That's why Wyatt Earp's deconstruction of Tombstone represents cultural action for freedom.
Yes, sir. But what does deconstruction mean?
Think of it this way. The Americans watch Tombstone and they think, aha, there is America, and America is good. But when they watch Wyatt Earp, and Wyatt Earp pokes holes in the Tombstone story, then the Americans say, wait, maybe Tombstone isn't so good after all. And if Tombstone isn't good, maybe America isn't good either.
America isn't good, sir. The People's Republic of F is good.
Exactly. You see, in order to conquer the United States, it won't be enough for our superior soldiery to invade its borders and establish control over its territory. We must also break the American spirit by desecrating its holy places. Any place where the Americans look and think, that's America, and America is good. We've got to tear that down. We've got to deconstruct it. And the Kevin Costner vehicle, Wyatt Earp, is going to help us do that with Tombstone. Wyatt Earp is going to problematize Tombstone and reveal how the Tombstone mythology is rife with systemic oppression.
Now the people understand, sir, all thanks to you. And right from the start, we see how your ingenious theories apply. Wyatt Earp is a full biopic about the character, where Tombstone only tells the end of the Wyatt Earp story, the big showdown with the cowboy gang in Arizona. So in this movie, we meet a Wyatt Earp who's maybe 14 or 15 years old on his family's farm in Iowa during the American Civil War.
You know, for as long as America is capitalist, they're still fighting their Civil War.
Wyatt Earp's father is Gene Hackman, who's a lawyer, and at the start of the film, Gene Hackman teaches Wyatt Earp a valuable lesson. Gene Hackman teaches Wyatt Earp that there are only two things you can rely on and believe in: family and the law. Then, Gene Hackman decides to move the Earp family west. He wants to get to California eventually. Then 7 years go by, and in those 7 years, the teenage Wyatt Earp grows up to be Kevin Costner. And he doesn't grow up to be Kevin Costner in his early 20s either. Wyatt Earp ages almost 3 decades in those 7 years and becomes a 40-year-old Kevin Costner. So, middle-aged and yet 20-year-old Kevin Costner is living out west doing odd jobs. But then he decides to move back to his childhood home in Missouri because he wants to marry his childhood sweetheart. Want to guess who Kevin Costner's childhood sweetheart is, sir? I'll give you a hint. We've met her previously in the movies we've reviewed on this show.
Is it Sandra Bullock?
No, sir. Kevin Costner's childhood sweetheart in Wyatt Earp is Annabeth Gish.
She wasn't in Gravity.
Annabeth Gish was dating Timothy Hutton in upstate New York in the 1990s in the film Beautiful Girls. But in Wyatt Earp, she's also dating Kevin Costner in Missouri in the 1870s.
Like, with a time machine?
Kevin Costner woos Annabeth Gish with lots of corny declarations of love. He says things like, "I wasn't prepared for how beautiful you are." To which Annabeth Gish replies, "Did you learn to talk that way out west?" To which Kevin Costner replies, "No, that's the best my screenwriters could come up with, and it might have been gallant and debonair if Kurt Russell had said it, because Kurt Russell is badass. But since I'm Kevin Costner, my declarations of love are all monotone, like someone's doing a line reading and not even trying to act."
So here we see the film begin to deconstruct the Tombstone mythology. The Americans see Kevin Costner and they think, Kevin Costner? We don't want Kevin Costner. We want Kurt Russell. If the story is actually about Kevin Costner, then I don't like it as much. It's not as cool. Maybe I don't want to identify with the Tombstone mythos anymore. Maybe it's not even true. Maybe this whole Tombstone thing is all a lie, in which case maybe the United States is a lie.
That makes a lot of sense, sir.
Right. We take a work of American mythology that's part of the way the Americans construct their identity, and we discredit it. We problematize it. We give the Americans cause to doubt the Tombstone story, to be disappointed with it. Then they think, if Tombstone is all a lie, and the United States is all a lie, well, I guess it's time to renounce capitalism and imperialism and overthrow our government and install the guy who runs the People's Republic of F as our new glorious leader.
Obviously. You're going to like where the story goes from here, sir, because they're not done deconstructing Kevin Costner. He marries Annabeth Gish, and they make a home together. She's pregnant with their first child, but then dies of typhoid. Kevin Costner is despondent. He wishes for death. He burns down their house and becomes a drunken wreck. Kevin Costner becomes a drifter and a beggar and ends up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where he mugs a man and steals his horse and gets arrested for it.
Nice. This is the right mythic representation of the U.S. How do you like Kevin Costner now, Americans?
Gene Hackman, who's Kevin Costner's father, shows up in Arkansas and posts his bail. Kevin Costner is scheduled to stand trial, and in those days horse thieves were hanged. But Gene Hackman doesn't want Kevin Costner to get hanged. He helps him escape out to the Old West. So it would seem that Gene Hackman only really believes in the law when it suits him, sir, when it benefits him and his family.
Just like the United States only believes in the law when it allows the American bourgeoisie to weaponize the concept of private property so they can use it to exploit, alienate, and estrange the American proletariat and exclude them from the bourgeoisie's position of privilege.
Kevin Costner moves out west, stops drinking, and does various jobs. He's a buffalo hunter. He's a dealer at casinos. He moves around to different places. Eventually, he's dealing cards at Wichita, Kansas, where he becomes a marshal, a lawman. Then he moves down to Dodge City, Kansas, where there's a lot of crime, and Kevin Costner is able to earn good money arresting the itinerant cowboys and other workers. Kevin Costner has sobered up, but he's a hard man. He's cold. He has a common-law wife, but he's distant and unaffectionate and won't start a family with her, even though she very much wants to. His brothers are there in Dodge City and are lawmen as well, so they make for a clan of their own, a mafia. Kevin Costner realizes at this point that there will never be any security for the Earp clan for as long as they keep working paycheck to paycheck as policemen and card dealers. So even though the rest of the family would prefer to stay in Kansas and lay down roots, Kevin Costner uproots everyone again and they move down to Tombstone, Arizona, where he hopes to strike it rich as a miner and entrepreneur. So then we get the familiar Tombstone story. Kevin Costner falls for the pretty actress. The feud between the Earps and the Cowboys gang escalates, and they have the showdown at the OK Corral. We meet Doc Holliday, but he's not Val Kilmer. He's Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid? That's not bitchin', like in Tombstone.
No, sir. None of these characters could be said to be bitchin'. One of Kevin Costner's brothers is killed in the ongoing fight afterwards, so Kevin Costner goes on his crusade of revenge. But the story isn't told as a legend here, as a hero's quest. Kevin Costner is revealed to be an obsessive, violent man who pursues his vendetta no matter what the cost to the extended Earp family. There's no big showdown between Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo at the end here either. Doc Holliday just guns him down unceremoniously.
Of course. Kevin Costner is no hero. When he leads his brothers in the feud against the cowboy gang, it's just one mafia against another. Just because one of these gangs wears sheriff badges doesn't change that at all. You see, this is all that the revolutionary spirit of the proletariat will amount to without a glorious leader to channel it. Instead of rising up against the bourgeoisie, the proletariat end up just fighting each other. Instead of workers versus owners, we get futile wars of workers versus workers, Earps versus cowboys. In the Tombstone film, there's a different message. Tombstone tells us that even though you live in an imperfect world, that isn't your fault, and you still have control over much of your own life, and you can handle it with heroism and bravery. But Wyatt Earp debunks Tombstone's naive, sentimental American thinking. Wyatt Earp teaches us that the world isn't made up of people, it's made up of systems. And those systems are controlled by certain leaders whose decisions are the result of certain ideologies. Kevin Costner spends the Wyatt Earp story trapped in the American capitalist imperialist system, and that's why, no matter how determined he is, he can't emancipate himself from it. In the end, he's still nothing but a drifter, nothing but a drunken horse thief, because that's the path laid down for him by the bourgeoisie capitalists who designed the American system to exploit him.
At the end of the film, it's almost 20 years later. Kevin Costner and the actress he met back at Tombstone have arrived in Alaska. Kevin Costner is going to try to strike it rich in the gold rush there. A young man recognizes him and asks Kevin Costner about one of the mythic stories of his time as deputy of Tombstone. Already these stories have developed into an American folklore, sir. After the young man leaves, Kevin Costner says to his wife, "Some people say it didn't happen that way."
Of course it didn't happen that way. Whatever the true story of his life in Tombstone, it's all been rewritten by American propagandists so as to subjugate and exploit Kevin Costner and the other workers. In fact, Kevin Costner actually died back at Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He was actually hanged as a horse thief, and everything that happens after that in Wyatt Earp is nothing but his dying fantasy about what he might have done with his life. That's how the story should be interpreted. You see, in America, the people are born free, yet everywhere they are in chains. Kevin Costner is no exception, and the Americans who watch this movie are no exception. But there is hope, Americans. Study the General Secretary F Manifesto. And when studying the General Secretary F Manifesto, you should have specific problems in mind, such as the problems Kevin Costner faced in this movie. To master my ideology, it's a good idea to read the basic concepts of my manifesto over and over again, memorizing important passages so that you'll be able to apply them in real life. If a critical mass of the American workers can grasp the concepts in my manifesto, they will amount collectively to an ideological hydrogen bomb to annihilate their capitalist imperialist oppressors. Kevin Costner has shown the Americans the Babylon to which they are currently exiled, but I will show them the promised land and guide them back to it, so long as they submit to my teaching.
This has been The Art of Cinema with our glorious leader, General Secretary F. Let us maintain vigilance against the ever-looming threat of an American invasion. You are required to report any non-participation or dissent amongst your comrades. Don't forget to tune in to The Art of Cinema again next time for further discussion of American movies in your next mandatory re-education session.